Happy New Year, everybody, and welcome back to another edition of the Gridiron Review 2017. Alongside Bill Wagner, I'm Pete Medhurst. Great to have you with us. Coming up on the show, big wins for Maryland and Navy on the college scene. Pros get underway this week, and this was the first week of high school football. And Bill, it's kind of ironic. High school football, all we do now during the summer is 7-on-7. Mm-hmm. Well, guess what it looks like now? It looks like we're playing 7-on-7 football out there. Tackling is non-existent. Points are going through the roof in many respects. And at some point, we've got to get this back to being football a little bit. We had a couple of wild and wacky games this past week. Probably none wackier than Southern and Glen Burnie, which ended up 69-42. I mean, this is essentially, PlayStation football.
Right.
A couple of defensive scores for the Gophers. Tyron Thompson ran for 124 yards and a few touchdowns as well. But we emphasize so much 7-on-7 during the summer now. It's starting to look like it in terms of the fall product now.
It is, and this is actually a discussion that goes all the way up to the NFL level. I was listening to the very esteemed John Clayton from ESPN the other day, and he said there's probably only about 4 good offensive lines in all of NFL football because the NFL still plays real football in which you have to run the ball. And they do not have enough good offensive linemen coming out of the college ranks, and it starts at the high school level. What they're getting in college is a bunch of guys who played 7-on-7. Nobody puts their hand in the dirt anymore. They're all in that. Nobody's in a 2-point stance. 2-point stance. Nobody's in a 3-point stance anymore. So that's what goes to college, and now college is feeding the NFL a bunch of offensive linemen who cannot put their hand in the dirt and come off the ball and play run football. So it's at all levels, and it's really starting to affect the NFL product. But, you think Southern. When's the last time Southern scored 42 points? And poor Southern finally put some points on the board, and they still got shellacked.
The ironic thing is they ran Russ Myers out because he ran the ball too much. Now they need to run the ball probably a little bit more than they are.
Right.
But they gave up 2 defensive touchdowns as well. Jaquan Pitts for Glen Burnie had 2 defensive touchdowns, an interception return and a fumble return for touchdowns in that game for the Gophers.
And we ought to note that Southern's schedule has changed this year. That's a big topic within the county public schools, is that Southern, Northeast, the smaller public schools, have been asking for years, why do we have to play all the other 4A schools? It really makes no sense for the likes of Southern and Northeast to play Old Mill, Broadneck, Arundel, the big boys. So they've kind of massaged the schedule, and Glen Burnie is one of the 4As that Southern elected to keep on their schedule.
Yeah.
And that didn't work out. But moving forward, Southern will be playing more schools of similar size.
Right. This week coming up, they'll play Friendly. They've got Easton coming up as well. And, I think the one thing is, the encouraging thing is the feeder program at Southern's been non-existent directly in their community the last couple of years.
They're not getting anything out of the youth.
It is starting to come back a little bit. They had one team at the 8th grade level last year, but they played the C level. So, again, you're not getting the highly trained athlete in terms of that.
Are some of the kids from the Southern District going and playing for South River, then coming back to Southern?
No, they're actually going to play in Calvert County.
Oh, they're going to play for Calvert County.
For Owings, Beach, Dunkirk, all which, ironically, there are all parts of Owings, North Beach area and everything that have kids that live in Anne Arundel County and Dunkirk in their areas. So they all go play those organizations. Those organizations have been around for years in terms of Dunkirk and Beach. Owings essentially was born out of people who came out of the Southern feeder system who were disenchanted with some of the leadership at that time, and they created the Owings Outlaws, and now you've had people who've been in that program, so it's going to take a lot for them to come back. The encouraging thing is SCYA now thankfully has new leadership. They've got people that are working extremely hard to revive the football program. They had 2 teams this year A couple kids short of having 3.
That's
so they're
good.
starting to revive, and I think
And
that's
that will
going to help.
benefit down the road.
I was talking to Athletic Director Ray Bowen yesterday at their field hockey game, which Southern won over Oakland Mills 11-0, so congratulations to Cindy Guy's team. They had like 40 kids for the varsity and a little 20-plus for the JV.
That's not bad.
That represents, for a small school, it's the smallest school in the county.
Yeah,
It represents, though, a raise in the numbers,
Yeah.
which is really good. And, you know, with Steve Erksleben leading the varsity, they were able to keep Russ Myers in the program, who's now coaching the JV, which was great to see. I expect eventually you're going to see this program start to pick up and finally start to move forward where Russ had them. Russ had them in the
Right.
state semifinals back in 2006 where they lost to Edmonton, who was an excellent team that year. So it's not as if Southern hasn't played high-level football. Russ had them in the state semifinals.
And what will be interesting to see is if whether this new schedule format that has them playing more similar opponents in terms of school size, like in Easton, if that can produce a playoff bid.
Well, I think, too, here's the one advantage they had. When they were good, like in 2006, they were able to get a ton of points by playing all those 4A schools.
Right,
So
when
there
they
is
beat those
a
4A
benefit.
schools,
But, of
right.
course, they had Devontae Burke, who went to play for Maine, which helped them considerably. He was a terrific playmaker off of that club. So, you're going to get some athletes. Eventually, you're going to revive the thing. That was the one thing. You played all those 4As, and you got all the points for it. Now, when you're playing smaller schools,
You're not going to get as many
You're
points.
not going to get as many. But when you look in their region, the teams that they're playing with
Or in the similar
are
spot.
powerhouses, but they're in the same vein where they're playing 2As, 3As, and even some 1As over in PG County. So that's not necessarily a bad thing for them. Give the Gophers a lot of credit. It's a great win for Glen Burnie to start the season. Another team, Elijah Mateen over at Meade, really good performance in his opening game for the Mustangs as they shut out South River by a score of 26-0. And again, that's a program that we saw when Rich Holzer had it. They were right there. I mean, they were as good as anybody in the county. We know there are people in the building over there that could play the game, and that's a great start for the Mustangs.
Well, I like Albert Jones. I've gotten to know Albert a little bit, and I think he's going to give Meade some stability. I think Albert is there for the long haul, and that's all it takes. As a coach who stays in the building, and I was over there for our Capital Gazette All-Star game during the winter and saw Albert running some off-season conditioning, some weightlifting sessions. So I know Albert's all in, and I think he'll do a good job at Meade. You mentioned high-scoring, wacky games. How about Severna Park in North County? What was that?
49-48.
49-48. Came down to an extra point at the end, and Severna Park holds on. And Bob Hoke from our newspaper, the Capital Gazette newspapers, covered the game, and he said as he walked up to William Bell, the coach of Severna Park, Bell just shook his head like, I don't know how we had a game like this. And, like you mentioned, it's concerning because, we scored 49 points, but we gave up 48. And so it's kind of a good news, bad news situation.
Yeah, Broadneck obviously had an easy win over the weekend over Bowie.
Yeah, they were up like 20-0 at halftime.
I think it was like 58-6, 56-6.
Right.
That finished up. Arundel, no problems with the Gators of Perry Hall, 56-34 in that game. The two heavy hitters from last year, Annapolis and Old Mill, because of not having to play Southern now, they've gone out and looked for other games.
Right,
What was interesting, if you're Old Mill, why play North Point? Because that's a team you're likely to see in the playoffs.
You're helping North Point gain points.
Yes.
When Old Mill, then if they go through and win 7-8 games in our county, North Point's going to get all those bonus points. So as you just mentioned,
now I know part of that comes down to availability. I mean, you got to play who's available, and you're not going to play. You're going to play another 4A school somewhere. You're not going to downgrade and not pick up 4A points in that situation. But it was interesting to see Old Mill get throttled 42-0.
That was a shocker
in that game.
That is the shocker of the weekend to see the Old Mill that has been so consistent, so solid. I mean, is North Point that good? Is suddenly this is a team that Broadneck went down there last year and beat them.
What's happening is you've got more and more people from PG County that just keep pushing further and further down.
Right, to Charles.
So they've gone into Charles. Charles had to build a new high school down there, St. Charles High, because so many people were in that North Point, Westlake area.
Right, they were overcrowded.
So they had so many people in the Waldorf area now. Essentially, you've had, because of North Point being built, it's been like 10 years now, and now St. Charles High. So you've had to build 2 new schools in that time because of the population, because everybody in PG is now moving down into Charles, get further and further out.
It's eventually going to go to Calvert County, probably.
Yeah.
But
they already are.
And then Annapolis, I give Annapolis credit for scheduling Archbishop Spalding. I mean, obviously, Nick Goodmalloy knows that's not a game he's not likely to win. He doesn't care. He said, I want to play the best. How are we going to be a playoff caliber team at the end of the year that's capable of making a run in the state playoffs if we don't play the best? So, Spalding gave kind of put it on him.
Ironically,
Julius Chestnut with another big game. We're going to be talking about him all year, tailback from Spalding. But Annapolis held their own for a little bit, put up some points, and that's going to benefit the Panthers down the road.
The thing, though, is I think everybody wanted to see this game last year. If you had the two rosters from last year, this is a highlight film game between those two teams. But Annapolis, not quite the same horses they had last year, at least here in week number 1. And, of course, Spalding able to recruit any athlete they want from the area, and it shows. I mean, let's face it, Kyle Schmidt's doing a great job there. I mean, Bill, they were, they started playing football, the late Mike Whittles did such a good job to get them going forward and make them at least an MIAA caliber program. And now Kyle is just taking it to another level. I mean, turning out consistent D1 playmakers. I mean, 2 of them we have seen on the field at Navy. Zach Abey the other night, first quarterback in Navy history to run for 200 and pass for 100 in the same game.
And we're already hearing good things about Evan Falkman, the freshman.
Kyle's been able to bring in some terrific talent there, coach it. That's the big thing. Coach it, develop it, and now Julius Chestnut appears to be the next in this line of playmakers that the Cavaliers have been able to turn out, and he was obviously putting on a show on Friday night.
Right, and Spalding's ranked number 2 in the Baltimore metro area to begin the season behind St. Francis. It already shapes up that those are the 2 teams to beat in the powerful MIAA conference. St. Francis is basically the old Gilman. Both the coaching staff and the players all went down to St. Francis, which is a school in the middle of Baltimore City that does not even have a field. They have to play all over the place. They play at Patterson Park. They play at Dunbar. They play wherever they can get a field come Friday or Saturday. But St. Francis is the powerhouse, loaded with Division I talent. But Spalding's right there, and that's what it came down to last year. St. Francis beat Spalding and won the league. Another game we should mention, Severn beating Annapolis Area Christian School. I picked that one wrong because I thought our man, Sam I Am, the great tailback, would have a big day. But Severn, that was a good win for Severn to beat Annapolis Area kind of handily.
Yeah, and look, I mean, in week 1, I think that's the one, we talk about all the time, talk to coaches. They've had some scrimmages, they've had practices, but you don't really know until the officials are there throwing flags and everything is structured and people who've scouted you. You just don't know what you have with many of these teams. Severn, of course, let's face it, Severn, it costs a little bit of money to go there.
Right. Well, and they have a first-year coach, we should remember. Chris Kirchenreiter stepped down and retired after a pretty nice stint. He did a good job at Severn, but they have a first-year coach, and that's a great opening win. Before we conclude our high school segment, let me make our plea. Please call in your results, high school coaches. This first week, first of all, we're talking about a lot of veteran coaches out there who did not report their results. We do not need to counsel, school, instruct these coaches on how to report their result to the Capital newspaper. Yet here in the first week, the only results we got were the games we covered directly, and then there was maybe 2 other schools that called in their results.
Meade South River, Glen Burnie Southern, and the Kent Island Snow Hill.
Right.
Those are the only games that made the roundup in the paper.
Right. Very disappointing. It's going to be hard for Pete and I to sit here on this show each week and talk effectively about high school football if the results aren't in the paper with names and information. So please pick up the phone, call in the result. If worse comes to worse, if you're past our deadline on Friday night, we'll run the result in the Sunday paper. But you have to call in the result and let us know what happened. Give us some highlights. The only people you're hurting when you don't report your result is your own kids. It's your only chance your players have to get a little
And if you don't believe what Bill is saying, just ask Bob Hoke, the high school sports editor of the Capital, because parents say, if you don't put my kid's name in the paper,
he can't
get a scholarship.
Yep. Bob Hoke said, I just learned
Unbelievable.
that the only way that people get scholarships is if their name is in the high school preview. But seriously, it is your responsibility, head coaches, and you don't have to do it yourself. You can assign someone every week to report the result. If you don't know the phone number or don't understand how to report, feel free to call me, send me an email, and I will fill you in. Or Bob Hoke, our high school sports editor, will as well. But it's your responsibility to report your results.
410-280-5952. It'll get you directly into the sports department on a Friday night.
Right.
See?
Thank you.
Before.
Thank you, Pete.
I used to answer that phone number every Friday night as a high school stringer at the Capital.
Yes, he did.
Man, that was a long time ago. Coming up, 2 college games, one that certainly defied logic in the execution and the way it was played, and the other took 5 hours and 44 minutes thanks to Mother Nature. We'll talk about that when we come back on the Gridiron Review. Welcome back, colleges. Bill and I were in Boca Raton for Navy Florida Atlantic, and of course, Bill, we didn't count on a 5-hour and 44-minute marathon because of lightning delays. Got through 3 quarters fine. Game was on a great pace. You were going to make deadline. Everything was going great, and then all of a sudden, we get some lightning in the distance. So let's stop the game, and it was torture. I mean, it was 3 hours and 10 minutes later before the game was actually finished, and you feel for the student athletes because they gotta go in the locker room. You try to hydrate them, try to get them back ready to play. They get back up, ready to play. Then they have to go back in, back and go back in. This happened 3 times.
Right. At one point, they came on the field, warmed up, and never started playing. They went back in after warming up. I laughed. Scott Strassmeyer, the Navy Sports Information Director, tweeted during the second delay, Navy is now eating its post-game meal in the locker room, but they needed some food.
Yeah,
they hadn't eaten since 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
I mean, we talked earlier in the high school segment about Zach Abey, and look, the nature of the offense. If you saw Georgia Tech, Tennessee this week, you saw Marshall at quarterback for Georgia Tech. Look, the quarterback is going to get a bulk of the activity in the triple option offense. Zach Abey, not perfect by any means, not perfect, but Bill, what he did the other night, if that's game 1 and he can get better, there's another season of good things ahead for this Navy football team. That's
right. Well, I talked to Ivan Jasper, the offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach yesterday, and he said Zach was what we know he is, a strong, tough, physical runner.
That's the rugby and wrestler in him coming out.
That is exactly
first contact, he's just brushing off first contact and keeping on going.
And that's another thing that Ivan Jasper, very tough to tackle. And that was his type of game. It was an inside game. Florida Atlantic was flowing their players out to the perimeter, so the Navy slots did not really touch the ball much, didn't do a whole lot of damage. It was an inside game for Chris High, the fullback, and Zach Abey. And Zach Abey really did some damage. Most rushing yards, 235 rushing yards, the most by an American Athletic Conference quarterback. And that's saying something because Keenan Reynolds played in the American Athletic Conference for a year. Quentin Flowers is an American Athletic Conference quarterback.
Greg Ward.
Yeah, that is really saying something for Zach Abey. That is quite an accomplishment. And as you mentioned, Pete, a lot that he can improve on. He had a bad pitch. If he makes a good pitch to Malcolm Perry, that goes for a touchdown or at least huge yardage. A couple throws
read on a pass play.
Yeah, he got barbecued, as he likes to say, by Coach Niemat for not throwing to the check down route. So that's the great news, is that he had a heck of a game, and there's a lot to improve.
No doubt about that. Defense for the Navy midshipmen was as good as any point last year. I mean,
that was impressive.
I talked to Dale Pearson about that, and look, for game 1, because let's face it, you're not allowed to hit much in practice anymore. You're not allowed to live tackle much. So you don't really know how good you're going to tackle until you get out there for games. And that their tackling for game 1 was pretty solid, especially with a lot of side-to-side passing.
Having to run things down. Well, I thought better than at any point last year, don't you?
No question.
Right, and Navy has talked about being more aggressive on defense. They realized in the American Athletic Conference with these 4 and 5 wide receiver sets and the spread passing games, you can't sit back in a zone. You're going to get picked apart. So you got to get after the quarterback and make him uncomfortable, get some sacks, get some pressures, get him out of the pocket, flush him, and that's what Navy did, I thought.
Our color commentator, Tom O'Brien, who's new on our network this year, the former Boston College, NC State coach, former Navy football player, brought up a great point. He said in week 1, you see more blunders and explosive plays on special teams than in any area of football.
Yeah.
If you don't believe me, just throw the Maryland-Texas film on. You had punt returns. You had multiple block kicks that went back for touchdowns. Ty Johnson had a big kickoff return after Texas had scored to move to within 3. Johnson, right down the field, 64-yard return to give him great field position. My only problem with Maryland in this game is they didn't give the ball to Ty Johnson enough.
They've got to.
He's their best football player.
They've got to utilize him more.
He is their best football player.
Right. He's a game-breaking threat. Anytime he touches the ball, he's capable of going the whole way. But you were mentioning what Navy played sound on special teams.
I
was
thought
what Tom O'Brien
except
was
for the first punt.
Driving to.
The first punt, but he.
That was a shame.
He said that, but you look around college football this whole weekend. We saw Alabama, Florida State had a block kick that went back for a touchdown. Two in the Maryland-Texas game. We had a Wyoming punter that missed the ball. I mean, literally missed the ball as he went to kick it. So special teams is the one unit because some teams put more emphasis on it.
All right, well, how much do you really practice the special teams?
Well, and again, if you're not hitting, you're not doing live hitting, you're not simulating game intensity.
Yeah.
You don't do it very much.
Right.
So,
right. Well, we should talk about the Maryland-Texas game. Obviously, Navy, great win in Boca Raton. But how about Maryland going into Austin, Texas? And what were they, a 18-point underdog?
17-point by kickoff, but they had a disastrous start in the game with a pick six for a touchdown and overcome that. And all of a sudden, you look up, they're up 30-14. Tyrell Pigram is running all over the place. Johnson's running all over the place. Pigram's completing passes when he had to. I thought DJ Moore had a great game.
Yeah, he's a nice player.
But you know what? For all you Piggy fans out there, Kasim Hill's better. Kasim Hill's better, and now it's going to be Kasim Hill's team, and at least he gets hurt somewhere down the road. We're only going to see Pigram next year in mop-up duty. He's having surgery this week for an ACL, but this Kasim Hill was brought in to be the quarterback of the future and to be a big-time player. How about him stepping on the field, Bill, in the middle of this wild atmosphere, having to close this game out for Maryland, and he stepped right in and looked like he'd been there for 5 years.
Well, I did a feature on Kasim when he was a senior in high school after he'd committed to Maryland, and he, by all accounts, you talk to Chris Basha, who's a Crofton resident and a quarterback guru. He trained Kasim from the time he was in 5th grade. You talk to his high school coaches, both at Gilman and St. John's, and they all say the kid is unbelievably calm, cool, collected. When he came into the game to replace Pigram, the first thing he said to his teammates was, "I've been doing this my whole life. It's football. I know what I'm doing. Let's go." And so that's the type of kid he is. He's unflappable. We're going to have to root for Kasim because he's an Anne Arundel County resident. He lives in Crofton, has for about 5 years now. Great kid, real good head on his shoulders, smart, savvy. His parents are both attorneys in the D.C. area, so great family. But Kasim did a tremendous job. And, I feel for Terrell Pigram because he did play well. He was much improved over what he showed us last year, particularly in the passing game. And what I think they'll maybe do with him is something like they did with Malcolm Perry at Navy. He'll still be the backup quarterback, but he's too good to keep off the field. So you use him in maybe a slash type role, maybe
jet sweeps.
I mean, get him the ball because he's got ability. He's quick. He's fast. So Terrell Pigram will be used, but you're absolutely right. Kasim Hill is the quarterback of the future. Everyone knew that the moment he signed. First 5-star quarterback they've had in quite a long time at Maryland, since going back to probably the Bobby Ross days of Boomer Esiason.
Norman Julius Esiason from Long Island.
Right, Staten Island, if I'm correct. But Kasim did a great job, and just a great win overall for Maryland. Showed up on a lot of every side of the ball. In addition to Pigram getting injured, they lost Anna Boehm, their star defensive end. He's also out for the year, so they did suffer some injuries.
Jermaine Carter picked up the slack, though. Jermaine Carter played an unbelievable game for them on Saturday. The question is now, how do they get it back up this week for the Towson Tigers?
Right. Well, that's for
Towson
Tigers, which beat Morgan 10-0 in a snoozer in the Battle of Baltimore City. It was dubbed.
I have a bone to pick with this game. I watched some of this game on TV.
You did?
I did.
Okay. Really?
I did. Because here's my bone to pick. The guy that was broadcasting the game, doing the play-by-play, Syracuse Newhouse guy, which means
he must be good.
I'm the elite of the elite if I go to Syracuse. He goes, there are 3 Division I football teams in Maryland. 2 of them are playing here tonight, and Towson plays the other one next week.
Oh, so they forgot about Navy.
Towson, Morgan, and Maryland. Who did he forget, Bill?
Yeah, probably the best of the bunch.
I swear. Naval Academy must be located near the equator.
Yeah, that's pretty bad. That's a major faux pas.
Come on, Phil. Phil Schoner. Come on. I mean, what? I don't understand why, the Washington Post's not covering Navy this week. I mean, it's just, I just don't get it. I mean, Navy might as well at times be located near the equator, yet they've been to bowl games. Let's see, 13 of the last 14 years. That's all I'm saying.
Proven program.
Am I a little biased?
No.
Yeah, they pay me. I'm a little biased. Coming up, we'll take a look at the pros who debut this week. Redskins, Eagles, Ravens, Bengals. I'll also touch on some of the youth highlights over the first 2 weeks of the season as well. It's Gridiron Review. We're back in a moment. Welcome back. Pros get underway this week. Bill Ravens with Joe Flacco back. He's back, pardon the pun.
We don't know how his back
is, but you can bet the Bengals are going to hit him in the back a little bit on Sunday.
They
get underway.
Right.
Redskins and Eagles. Redskins offense in the preseason certainly looks subpar. Big questions surrounding each team. Certainly the coaching staff of the Ravens. John Harbaugh got an extension, but none of the assistants are signed past this year. So interesting for this Baltimore team. I think the Steelers are much improved with the moves they've made here, even in the last couple of weeks, getting J.J. Wilcox and Joe Hayden. And you got to feel the Bengals are going to be close. So where are the Ravens going to get enough wins to be a factor here in this Central Division?
It's a
or
good,
AFC North now.
Right. Well, it's a very good question. I mean, are the Ravens improved? I mean, they really bulked up the defense. They put all of their eggs in the defensive basket, really did nothing to help the offense. And then the offensive line was immediately decimated right off the bat. You had John Urschel decided to retire unexpectedly. You had players go down with injuries, season-ending injuries. They really have a questionable offensive line, in my opinion, which, who's protecting Joe Flacco, as you mentioned. He's got a bad back. The Bengals, one of their strengths of their team is their defensive line. If they overwhelm this Ravens offensive line, they're not going to be able to run the ball or pass the ball. I think what you're looking for with the Baltimore Ravens this year is a bunch of 10-0, 13-0 games. It's Justin Tucker and the defense.
Their defense is good.
Oh, the defense is going to be solid.
Legit. It's not the 2001 defense. Let's
they've been bringing that up, right?
They're pretty good. I mean, I think they have a potential to be a top 5 defense in the NFL this year.
And they're going to need it because I don't think they're going to score a lot of points. I think they're going to be relying on the leg of Justin Tucker, and if they get one touchdown a game, it's going to be a plus. So I think the Ravens defense is going to have to pitch some shutouts or some couple field goals to hold teams to single digits.
Well, we'll see what happens this week. Meanwhile, the Redskins take on an Eagles team, the second year with Carson Wentz. They get Alshon Jeffrey from the Chicago Bears via free agency. And if you're the Redskins, you got Cousins back. You've got Jordan Reed back. You have to like what potential you have with Terrell Pryor at the wide receiver spot. And obviously Rob Kelly is going to be your lead runner now. The question for me is if they can keep their offensive line healthy, then they've got a chance to score some points. The question is, they've got a lot of new faces on defense. Zach Brown, leading tackler from last year from Buffalo. DJ Swearingen is there as well. So they've got some better personnel. If they play like it, they have a chance if the offense doesn't self-destruct in big moments like it did last year in the season finale against the New York Giants. I mean, they were right there. All they had to do was win a game. They go to playoffs.
Right. Well, and the offensive line was in preseason, and we know that the preseason games mean nothing, but I was shocked to see what was one of the NFL's best offensive lines last year did not show that in preseason. In the limited reps that the starting offensive line got, were not impressive in my opinion. So hopefully they'll step up. And as you said, I think they got parts at both running back. Receiver is a question mark. They lost 2 very good receivers, and they let them go pretty much.
That's because the 2 teams that signed him really overpaid. I mean, the 49ers overpaid for Pierre Garçon.
Absolutely, and Deshaun Jackson goes down to Tampa. And so you've Terrell Pryor, I think, will replace one of those 2. I guess you're asking him to kind of fill the Deshaun Jackson role of a home run hitter. But Josh Doxson, I mean, is this kid legit? Is he going to step up? Is he going to play?
TCU. That's all I can tell you. He was great at TCU.
We haven't seen him on an NFL field.
That's all I can tell you. He was great at TCU. I watched him.
And Jordan Reed's going to produce, and that'll be the security blanket for.
He could get a concussion at any time. That's the bad thing there.
Right.
Love the fact that drafted my man Jeremy Sprinkle out of Arkansas. Good tight end for the future. By the way, youth football this year. Jason Clark, new president of the AAYFA.
That's right.
Congratulations, I think, to Jason.
Yeah.
That's a thankless job.
It is a thankless job.
AAYFA board and Jeff Porter, who of course heads it up through our office for Anne Arundel County Parks and Recreation. The only time the phone rings is when somebody complains.
That's
they don't
exactly
like the schedule. Right.
Something happened during the week. The officials stunk.
Right. I mean, guy volunteers coach a youth league team, but he's got his son playing on a high school team, and you got to try and revamp the schedule so it meets all of his son's high school games, even though he's not coaching that team. I mean, people don't understand all of the phone calls and the requests and that every single parent tries to appease. Go through your commissioner first of all. Right. You don't need to call downtown. Call your commissioner. Your commissioner is in all the meetings with the AAYFA board and Parks and Recreation. Your commissioner has the answers, and if he doesn't, then that's his fault because he's not paying attention in the meetings. I want to point out something. Big jamboree coming up this week, and we talk about younger players, and this year we only have 123 teams overall. A couple years ago we had over 200.
All right, so it's down a little bit.
A little bit. You get 123 teams down from 205. Here's the thing. Folks at Lake Waterford Park this week, the Chargers putting on a heck of a flag football jamboree, and I think this is such a great step for the future development of football. I don't think we need to put 70s and 80-pound kids in full pads. I really don't. We should play the 70s and 80-pound kids as 5, 6, 7, 8 and unders, play them in flag. That way they all get a taste of what the skill positions are like, because that's the nature of flag football. And when they're about 9 years old, I think they're more physically able to handle the game of football, and their brains are a little more developed, their bodies are a little more developed, so they can go out and handle the full contact. Because we've got teams that are struggling. You get 14, 15 kids on a team. All it takes is 1 or 2 kids to get hurt, another kid to be out of town that weekend because his parents aren't
field a
really
squad.
committed. They can't field a squad. So real tip of the cap to the Chargers this week, putting on this jamboree. A lot of teams that are playing in it on Saturday over there. So if you can get over there for a little while just to see the mighty mites of the future playing flag football, I think this is an outstanding way to go. We had a great program in the spring that John Caleo, the former Maryland quarterback, put on through the folks at Under Armour. And again, it's just a great way to get them acclimated to football. So, they find out if they really, really like it or not. And there are some kids who probably haven't tasted football. They get a taste of it this way, and they may want to stick with it for the future.
Well, I think this is where we're headed for the younger ages. There are a lot more parents reluctant to put their kids in full pads and a helmet because of the concussion concerns. And frankly, I think, almost everybody universally agrees a kid that age should not be banging heads and exposing their brains, which are not fully developed, to potential concussive injuries. So what I was curious, so does Anne Arundel County Recreation and Parks sanction and monitor and organize flag football? Is that where we're headed? Where
We
there'll be
don't, but
a
that's
flag
probably,
football league?
to me, that's where we're headed. I think that's definitely something down the road that the Parks Department is examining along with AAYFA, because, again, we work in conjunction with AAYFA. There's this misnomer that's out there that we're the end-all and be-all when it comes. Everybody complains, the county's doing this, county's doing that. No, we work in conjunction with the AAYFA board to try and put this on. It's the same thing we do with the AAYSL with soccer. Soccer runs flawlessly in Anne Arundel County. But no sport draws complaints from people like the sport of football. It is uncanny. You look at the message boards, social media, active part of it now. It's great. And 90% of the social media is terrific. It's supportive of the athletes. It's informative with information about the results from the weekend and stuff like that. There's 10% of it out there. You got people using the F-bomb on social media and stuff like that. Look, we can support these kids, and we can talk smack and all that. We don't have to drop F-bombs on a public message board on Facebook where you've got potential kids that are looking at it. It's just not that important from that standpoint. But we can still celebrate these kids without dropping profanity in the board. But I think flag is something that we're looking at, especially for the younger kids down the road, as something that does have some potential and some wheels along with it. So hopefully we can get that all together. That'll do it for our show this week. As always, we appreciate you watching. The first of many this coming year. You, of course, can download it. Go to Anne Arundel County Parks and Recreation page. We'll have a link up for you where you can just click on each and every week. You can find the Gridiron Review as well as on your local cable systems as well. Bill and I will be in Annapolis this week for Tulane and Navy. That should be a good one, 3:30 on Saturday. For Bill Wagner, I'm Pete Medhurst. Thanks for joining us this week on the Gridiron Review.